What's up? Alright, so MK677. MK677 is a growth hormone secretagogue. Now, what that means is it forces the pituitary to produce more growth hormone. Now, what is growth hormone? Well, growth hormone was originally put out there by a guy named Dr. Ronald Klatz, who wrote the book Grow Young with HGH, right? So Dr. Klatz, long story short, he found in his patients what happened whenever he would put them on growth hormone. These are the averages. An 8.8% increase in muscle mass with no change in diet or exercise in 6 months. A 14.4% loss in body fat on average in 6 months without dieting. Now, this ain't me. This is Dr. Ronald Klatz, so I can say this. Higher energy levels, higher sexual performance, regrowth of heart, liver, spleen, kidneys, and other organs that shrink with age, greater cardiac output, superior immune function, increased exercise performance, better kidney function, lower blood pressure, improved cholesterol profile with HDL and lower LDL, with higher HDL and lower LDL, stronger bones, faster wound healing, stronger, younger, thicker, tighter skin, hair regrowth, wrinkle removal, elimination of cellulite, sharper vision, mood elevation, increased memory retention, and improved sleep. I don't know what else you can want. So that's why people take growth hormone, okay? Now, growth hormone comes in an injection. It'll run about $1,500 a month these days if you get real good growth hormone. Now, growth hormone is a long amino acid chain peptide. And what that means is you got 191 amino acid chain peptide, which makes it very hard to structure and very fragile. So you don't want to shake it too much. You can't digest it, taking it orally. It has to be injected, and you got to keep it at the right temperature and all this crap. So what they've done is they said, all right, let's see if there's another way to increase growth hormone. So they found out that through the chain of reactions in the body, you have something called ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hormone that causes the stomach to growl or makes us hungry, right? Now, that signals the pituitary to produce growth hormone. The reason being is insulin and growth hormone compete for the same receptor, okay? So what happens is you want growth hormone the highest when insulin's the lowest. So when you get hungry, there's no need for insulin. Growth hormone levels would shoot up. God's really smart. So the body's made to do this. Now, here's the thing. If we want higher growth hormone to get these benefits, we can fast. So you can just stop eating. And that will increase growth hormone levels. One of the reasons that all the Jews in the concentration camps, their teeth started to repair, all their cavities went away, they started to get healthier skin, all these things, is because they were starving. Really, believe it or not, the body goes into a healing crisis when there's no food. But this is not very good for building muscle, okay? So growth hormone helps to increase muscle. It's literally the reason that we go from a 6-pound baby to a full-grown adult. It's the reason we build kneecaps. It's the reason we build bigger muscles, and we get it regulates all the other hormones in the body. You could think of it as the conductor sitting up there keeping the orchestra in tune, right? Well, as we get older, the pituitary enlarges. Well, it produces less growth hormone as it enlarges, and we start to age and degenerate. So a lot of the things that happen with aging are due to a lack of proper hormone function. To keep the hormones in this cascade of this orchestra working properly, well, we want to keep our growth hormone levels at their highest they can be naturally. Now, if we get too much growth hormone, what happens? Well, you can get like your forehead will start to enlarge, or like the gut will start to get big. And what that is you have far too elevated an amount of growth hormone. What we found is if you can stimulate growth hormone through the act of ghrelin, or the hunger hormone, then the pituitary will only produce as much as it is capable, which means you will not get too much, right? So this means not only are you producing your own 191 amino acid chain peptide, so it can't be screwed up, but you're only going to produce as much as your body needs or is allowed to by the pituitary. Now, there is one caveat here. The one thing we found that there can be an issue with taking a growth hormone secretagogue is if someone is diabetic or even pre-diabetic, what will happen is because you have a 24-hour release of growth hormone, and by the way, the pituitary never gets tired of producing growth hormone. It'll never produce too much, and it will never down-regulate once the secretagogue stops, simply because your body needs the growth hormone. It really likes this. But what can happen is if you're eating too much sugar, insulin levels are, jacked up, then the growth hormone can fill the insulin receptors, which will cause the A1C and blood sugar levels to be off. This can cause problems with the diabetic. Now, if you can stop eating sugar, thereby decreasing the need for insulin, and once growth hormone levels were to raise and stay at a higher level for extended periods, what would happen is you would start to possibly reverse diabetes or become more insulin sensitive, probably due to not eating sugar as much as growth hormone levels coming up and it re-regulating your pancreas to produce insulin. But with that said, here's my personal experience, which I can give. According to YouTube, it's perfectly fine and for me to tell you about what happened with me. So my personal experience, I got this idea to take this research chemical, and I was like, hey doc, can I take this? And he's like, yeah, sure, we'll check you out, make sure what's going on. So I got permission, because you can't take a research chemical without getting permission from your medical professional, right? Right, okay. So research chemicals are not for human consumption. They're not to be eaten, they're not to be snorted, they're not to be banged, they're not to be insulflated, they are not to be used as procreation aids or in any other manner stared at too long. You must always get permission from the judge, a magistrate, your local police officer, a nurse, and your mother-in-law and a medical professional before you take a research chemical or try to administer this to anyone. It's for research purposes only. So here's what we do is once I got all those permissions I needed and I did everything I was supposed to, I was like, well, I looked at it and there was 90 in a bottle. And I was like, well, dang on. That means you got to take 3 because it lasts a month that way. I take 30 milligrams. Upon doing this, I started to get lightheaded and I started to get hungry, really hungry. And it felt like my blood sugar had bottomed out and I started wanting to go to sleep. So I went and got something to eat. Brought my blood sugar levels back up, and every few hours I would feel this same thing start to happen. And I thought, oh my God, like you've done it now, like stupid ass taking research chemical. What the hell's wrong with you? But what happened is I figured out that as my growth hormone levels would spur as they normally pulse, every few hours I would get this really intense pulse of growth hormone, and it would take up all the insulin receptors, and my blood sugar would drop down because my body's going into repair mode or whatever, and then I'd have to eat something, and then I'd feel better. So not only does this make you hungry, or made me hungry, and it caused me to gain weight, which I gained muscle mass, growth hormone does something else. Growth hormone shuts off the fat cell for storage so that all this extra energy goes into the muscle, and especially when taken with insulin. So if you're eating while taking MK677 or something, then the excess food is going to go into the muscle instead of the fat cell. Like your body literally blocks off the fat cell, so the body has to push this energy into the muscle to build muscle. That's why MK677 would work as an anabolic as it did for me. Now, here's the thing, is growth hormone itself is not a very anabolic hormone. No matter what anybody says, it's really not. Taken in conjunction with other hormones, it is the master hormone that organizes and keeps the orchestra in sync. So other anabolics work way better with growth hormone present. Growth hormone by itself, not so anabolic. It regulates the other hormones, and it acts as an anabolic only to the degree that the body that needs it. But it's never going to be a testosterone or a tren or anything like that. But what it does do is it blocks off that fat cell, and it allows the insulin to transport that energy only into the muscle. So now you can build muscle, and many people will gain body fat and will bloat with MK677 is what we've noticed. And that's simply because, well, their diet's jacked up. Like, honestly, their salt intake's too high. Their diet's just completely, totally wrong. I personally, once I regulated, I stayed on MK677 for 16 months. I dropped down to 20 milligrams, and I stayed there for probably like 2 or 3 weeks. I then went to 10 milligrams a day, and I stayed there for a long time. And toward about the last 3 months of administration of MK677, I was taking like 10 milligrams every other day. And it seemed like my sensitivity to the MK677 kept getting less and less. And I think that was due to my pituitary producing more and more growth hormone. And my hypothesis there is simply that the body, every soft cell tissue in the human body is replicated every 11 months. So in 11 months, what had happened is my pituitary, its new homeostasis or balance was to produce the extra growth hormone. So I did not need extra MK677 without getting that tired, feeling that lethargic thing. And I learned to administer the MK677 before bed, which really saved me from a lot of the lethargy issues that come with having excess growth hormone. Growth hormone is only produced in mass amounts when we're in stage 4 sleep. So it's produced when we're starving or when we're hungry and when we're like dead asleep. So when we start to produce excess growth hormone, we do get lethargy because, well, you're able to recover and recuperate, and the body goes into a healing crisis, which would mean you want to sleep because that's when you heal, or that's when, people heal. So that's my personal experience. I'm not saying that anybody should ever administer a research chemical to themselves. You can only do that if you have permission from the proper authorities, and you can buy research chemicals, but you can't use them. You can only use them to do research for research purposes in research laboratories. And I am not liable for anyone who does anything with a research chemical. That's completely between you, God, and whatever authority catches you. But that's my experience with it, and I think it most beneficial whenever it becomes like, a medicine that you can go get from your doctor for $4,000 or something. It would be most beneficial to be used in conjunction with bodybuilding protocols if the person were to utilize it that way. Then they would want to administer probably 20 or 10 milligrams per day, and then in doing so, working with their medical professional, make sure that they are getting a high enough caloric intake that the body can do the healing. Now, over an extended period of time, then if they would do a lower dose and they would heal the entire body and get all these benefits over the 16 months, as was my experience. I've dislocated my left shoulder 5 times, my right one 3, my right knee and my right hip give me all kind of problems. After that 16 months, I have no longer had issues with those. They're like 95 to 99% better, like the whole thing. But I was also administering Ultra Joint Health, which has, you know, your MSM, your glucosamine, chondroitin, and all the necessary things to rebuild cartilage. I was administering all types of vitamins and minerals and things like that. So I had the raw building material, and the hormones were right for regeneration. We have seen people that rebuild things like a 1/4 inch of cartilage in their knees taking just Ultra Joint Health. So if the hormones are there, I can only imagine it would be more effective. Now, once again, disclaimer: research chemicals are not for human consumption. They're not to be eaten, they're not to be snorted, they're not to be banged, they're not to be stared at too long. They are simply for research purposes. So only go purchase something like this if you are a researcher or you have your doctor's or medical professionals' permission to do so. But that's my experience with it. I no longer administer that because it's just not needed. I have healed, I'm good. But I can see how it could be highly effective for those who may want to. So I thought that it would be a good way to get the word out about this MK677 growth hormone secretagogue and all the benefits that it could possibly carry with it. So